Hello, welcome to Native Yoga Center. My name is Todd McLaughlin, and today I want to show you some tips and tricks around how to practice Rooster Pose called Kukkutasana. And Kukkutasana is an advanced pose in the Ashtanga system, the Ashtanga primary series. It follows the pose called Garbhapindasana, of which go ahead and watch my tutorial on Garbhapindasana, also known as embryo pose or fetus in the womb, embryo in the womb pose. It involves putting the legs in lotus, sliding the arms through the lotus, and after we hold the pose, we come into what's called Kukkutasana, where we have our hands on the floor like little chicken feet, rooster feet. We lean forward and try to lift up. Now, that requires a whole bunch of hip flexibility, and the main thing I want to focus on during this tutorial is the lifting up part, because the lotus is a whole nother piece. The rooster pose really is a combination of an arm balance and hip flexibility in relation to the lotus. So the first thing I want to point out is that a way that beginners can practice this pose. So if you're in a lead or Mysore style Ashtanga class setting, and we come to the pose called Rooster, the easiest way to do Rooster is to just have the legs crossed, place the palms on the floor, and practice a variation of what's called inhale up in the vinyasa system. Sometimes this pose can be called lolasana or tolasana, scale posture. However, in the beginning, the main thing that we're learning to do is to recruit space in the body to be able to lift the hips up off the floor. If I go to put my hands on the floor, I have my spine straight, and I lock my elbows out completely, it'll feel like my arms are not long enough for my hips to come up. So there's three main places that we recruit space to be able to get the hips up. One, straightening the arms all the way. If I try to do this with bent elbows, I really don't have a chance of lifting. If I lock out my elbows, then the next place we're going to create movement is in the shoulder blades. Watch how my spine is straight right now, but if I just work on elevation and depression of the scapulas, when we push down, the shoulder blades are moving down the back, and that's called scapula depression. So to come up into the rooster pose, we're going to depress the scapulas. So that's where one main motion is going to come from. The other, apart from locking out the elbows and straightening the arms, the third is to round the spine. So in this case, if I bend the knees, lean body forward. So yes, my knees are bending, but when I say bend the knees, I mean actually lift the knees a little bit. My feet are going to stay touching the floor. I take my hands a little forward of my hips, lean the body a little forward, lock out the elbows, round through the back, and depress the scapulas. That's how we create a little bit of space here for the hips to lift off of the ground. Easier said than done, of course. So another great way to start building up into Rooster is to take two yoga blocks that are of equal height. Place them on the floor beside your hips. Place your hands on the blocks. And now this gives us a little bit of an extended arm position, and it can help us build the ability to actually hold our body weight on our arms. This does presuppose you have the ability to actually come down on the floor and cross your legs and create this nice, easy style balled up position. Not everybody is able to do that right away. So you see here I have two chairs. And another great way to start to work this ability is you got to make sure, well, the chairs are of equal height. So obviously not one chair higher than the other. The other thing that you have to be really aware of is that we want to make sure the chair is stable. I know it seems obvious, but might as well paint the obvious when needed. Okay, so now I'm in a kneeling position. I have my hands on the chairs, on the edge of the chairs, and all I'm going to do is just basically press down into the chairs and work the ability, building a little bit of upper body strength to actually sustain body weight. And here I'm even doing little push-up motions with the arms. So this is a good way to build strength. And another thing that can be done, because a key ingredient in the pose when we actually are lifting the whole body off of the floor is the engagement of the psoas major, psoas minor, and the iliacus muscle, which is really one big muscle called the iliopsoas, the psoas muscles. So these are our hip flexors. And what happens is that eventually what we can do is we can balance on the chairs and we can start to lift our knees in the air. And this is a great way to build our strength for the rooster, is to use the chairs and to float in between the chairs. So that's definitely challenging, don't get me wrong, but that's a good way to build your tricep muscle strength, because every time you straighten your arms and you lock out your elbows, that's triceps brachii contracting. The other thing that we have to be aware of is that this is a very challenging posture for the wrists. So there's a whole build-up process that cultivates or culminates with vinyasa practice, because all the up dogs, the chaturangas and the down dogs, help us to build coordination and strengthen our wrists. So you might find when you start experimenting and working with these positions that it's quite challenging. Now, another way that you can do this is if I just sit in the chair, and you have any chair and you just put your hands on the chair and you start to just hold your body weight up with your arms on the edge of the chair. So this is also a good way to cultivate your ability to hold Kukkutasana, Rooster Pose, by pushing down and just working on rounding the back, push into the arms, and you can just go up and down a few times. It's a great exercise. You can even just turn sitting in a chair at any time during the day as an exercise. Make sure you don't do this on a chair that has wheels on the bottom for obvious reasons. Make sure you have a stable surface, stuck to the floor, can't slide. Build some upper body strength this way. All right, so going a little bit further in on the technique. So there is, this is challenging, but if you can, let me just move my chairs out of the way. If you can cross your legs and float your feet in the air, then you can also practice Rooster Pose by floating the feet in the air. That is very challenging. So as a beginner, you might say, come on. All right, I understand, don't worry. We have, lots of students that come through the studio every day. And I get a chance to see so many different body types, shapes, sizes, ability levels, backgrounds, injuries, no injuries. And so I'm aware of what's out there. And I know what you're working with, and you can definitely build and improve your ability here. So another thing to notice what I'm doing, I have the blocks, and I have my hands on the blocks, which actually feels really good on my wrist because it's a little more cushiony. So if you're using those really dense cork blocks, maybe switch over to the spongier yoga blocks if you want. And here I'm just basically practicing leaning forward, the body weight, pushing down, lifting the hips, bending the elbows, lowering down. So this is a good way to build the Kukkutasana strength. You can also put a clock in front of you, hit the timer. I'm going to try to hold it for 10 seconds. And you just push and you hold. And you can even work a little bit of shoulder strengthening motion. So there's an endless amount of work that can be done here in the Rooster Pose and to build a lot of strength. Now, some of you might be able to put your legs into lotus, and you're still unable to get your hands through the lotus in the previous pose called Garbhapindasana, in which case you can hold the Garbhapindasana here. We would roll around. I'll make a separate video for that on another day. And then come into Kukkutasana. One option here is to even use the blocks with the lotus and float your lotus. And now we're involving the hip flexor strength as well as the upper body and arm strength, so that we could eventually, without blocks, palms flat on floor, hold Rooster Pose, lifting here. So recently I heard somebody say, Todd, your videos are great, but there's no way I could do any of that. Remember, if that is way too challenging, just back up a little bit and find one of the previous methods that I showed you, and just start developing a daily practice where maybe you just focus on Kukkutasana for like 2 weeks and you just do blocks on floor, and every day you just take a little bit of time holding your body weight here. Little by little, incrementally, you're getting stronger, and this is definitely going to help. You can do this. You can definitely do this. But be consistent and persistent, but also listen to your body. If you start to develop some wrist pain, back off for a few days, let the pain dissipate, let your arms and let everything relax a little, and then come back to it, a little less intensity, and see if you can start to re-engage again. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, remember, just reach out to me, info@Native Yoga Center. Remember to check out our website, nativeyogacenter.com. If you're watching this on any of the social media channels, please hit the like button and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Also, if you're on YouTube, subscribe. We appreciate it. All right. Until next time, I have another live stream for you at 12 p.m. every Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, and 12 p.m. Eastern. All right. Happy practice. Keep it going. Obla.